Hi, I'm Shana Meyerson with the Yoga of War podcast, here today with media watchdogs Richard Landis and ex-influencer Mr. Gazawood. If you appreciate and find value in these important discussions, please consider supporting the show. Your donations ensure that I can continue to bring you such amazing and esteemed guests. Details are pinned in the comments below. I know that everyone listening has heard of Hollywood, and there's a pretty good chance you've even heard of Bollywood. But have you heard of Pallywood? You should, because I 100% guarantee you have seen it, probably pretty often in the last 22 months in particular, and you probably didn't even know it. Pallywood is a term coined by historian Professor Richard Landis to describe the deliberate staging, fabrication, or manipulation of media, primarily visual, but also verbal, by Palestinian sources to falsely depict Israel as an aggressor and gain international sympathy. And boy, is it effective. Most people unquestioningly believe what they see with their own two eyes. I mean, it seems pretty rational, right? But I promise you, today's discussion and presentation are guaranteed to open your eyes to a whole new reality. Richard Landis is a historian and author specializing in millennialism, apocalyptic movements, and media criticism, particularly in relation to the Arab-Israeli conflict. A former professor of medieval history, Landis is the author or editor of several influential books, including Can the Whole World Be Wrong? I love it, because the answer is yes.
Alas, yes.
Spoiler alert. And Salem on the Thames. He has written extensively on topics such as anti-Semitism, lethal journalism, and honor-shame cultures, with his work appearing in Tablet, Fathom, White Rose Magazine, and Israel Affairs. Landis is also known for his pioneering exposés on Pallywood and the Mohammed al-Dura affair, producing documentaries that critique Western media coverage of the Middle East. He's joined today by the social media influencer known as Gazawood, the Pallywood Saga. Richard and Mr. Gazawood, who prefers to remain anonymous, thank you guys so much for joining me today.
You're welcome.
It's such a pleasure to have you. And it couldn't come at a better time.
Alas.
Better, that I use that term very,
More
very
appropriate.
loosely, more appropriate. So to start off, Richard, you're a medievalist, and when I think of medieval times, obviously I can see some parallels, but we do not live in medieval times. How is it that you got into analyzing political media tactics with a background in studying medieval times?
Well, I don't think the connection was direct initially, in the sense that I was a medievalist, but I was also a Zionist. I came here when I was 18 in the summer of '67, returned numerous times, including a sabbatical with my family during the Oslo process. So what happened was that I was already sort of, engaged in the state of Israel, and I was also on the board of the AJC New England. I was teaching at Boston University, and they had a media committee, and I was on the media committee. And when the Intifada started, everybody was just scratching their heads. How did this happen? All of a sudden, the media was Western media was astoundingly hostile to Israel and repeatedly giving misinformation.
What year was this for those people who don't know about
We're
the
talking
Intifada?
about 2000, the Intifada breaks out. 2002, there's this awful wave of what I call lethal journalism, in which the lethal journalism is when you report one side's war propaganda as news. So in a foreign conflict, own war propaganda is when you report your own enemies' war propaganda as news, which is in fact what the West is doing without realizing it, because they think they're just hurting Israel and they don't realize they're hurting the West as well. But we can come back to that. In any case, the Palestinians claim that the Israelis had come in and summarily executed the way the Nazis would, hundreds of civilians, buried them in mass graves, covered them over with bulldozers and so on. And for 3 weeks, the press couldn't get in. And for 3 weeks, they reported this as true. In the end, somewhere between 52 to 56 Palestinians were killed in 3 weeks of urban warfare, which is an incredibly low number. And 40 of them were combatants, which means we're talking about 2 combatants to every civilian killed, which is an unheard of record in urban warfare, where it's usually 3 civilians to 1 combatant, and yet it was reported as a massacre. So around this time, we were trying to figure out what was going on, and I read an article about the Muhammad Adua affair, which was this boy behind a barrel in September 30th, 2000 in Netzarim Junction, and you see him, you see bullet fire, you're told it's coming from the Israeli position. You're told that they're targeting this boy and his father, and then you're told the boy dies.
Okay.
And it was a spectacular story. It made it all over the world. So then in 2003, in June, James Fallows for the Atlantic Monthly came out with a story about this and about this Israeli researcher who had collected a bunch of footage and who argued that it was fake. And I read the article, and so from that point on, I went to France and worked with the people who had done work on this in France. And then I went to Israel and I saw the footage, 2 hours of Reuters footage that they sent to him when he said he was making this investigation. They would never do it today, but they did then. He had 2 hours of footage by a Palestinian journalist with a camera from Reuters in Netzarim Junction the day the boy allegedly got shot. And there's nothing in it but stage scenes or, Palestinians pushing, tires and flames at the Israeli position, but there was no, and then all of a sudden at the end, there's some gunfire and so on. Anyway, so one of the things that struck me as I tried to investigate this was how beyond the very notions of Westerners, it might be that the Palestinians would stage a story in which the Israelis deliberately target and kill a young boy in his father's arms. That was unthinkable. And so, I'd talk to people about what I was doing, and I'd say, well, there are 5 possibilities. The Israelis on purpose, which is what the Palestinians were claiming. The Israelis by accident, which is what the Israelis initially said. The Palestinians by accident, since the gunfire seems to be coming from their position, or the Palestinians on purpose, which was a position that got one of the people in the investigation fired for saying. It is pretty awful to say they would kill their own kid just for publicity. But as we see today, Hamas is willing to have literally thousands of Palestinians, Gazans killed for publicity. But okay, we'll come back to that. In any case, so I would say, okay, and I'd say, and there's a 5th possibility. And nobody that I spoke to, I mean, I must have said this to 100 people, none of them said staged. They said what the Red Cross shot him, the cameraman shot him, whatever, but they just assumed he had been shot. And it never occurred to them that the Palestinians would fake this. So I'm looking at all this footage from Reuters, which is full of stage scenes. And then I got a chance to see the footage of the journalist who filmed the alleged death of Muhammad Adua. And I'm sitting with the French-Israeli journalist who took his footage and made it into a story, which is literally the definition of lethal journalism. You take war propaganda and you make it news. And I'm sitting with Charles Anderlin from France too, and Charles Anderlin's cameraman, and me, his Israeli cameraman, and we're looking at the footage, and it's one fake after another. And at one point, there was one incident which was particularly silly, in which this big, heavy-set man grabbed his leg as if he were injured. And, you know, at that point, people are supposed to come and carry him to the thing, and only little kids came around. So he shooed them away and walked away without limping.
Or wasn't he limping on the wrong leg?
No, that's a different one.
Oh,
He done caught that in.
Okay.
Sorry, whoops. Anyway, so the French cameraman laughed, and I said, "Why'd you laugh?" He said, "Well, it seems so fake." And I turned to Anderlin and I said, "You know, all of this stuff seems fake. What's going on?" He says, "Oh, they do that all the time. It's a cultural thing."
Okay.
Right, which is a good definition of Orientalism. But in any case, the fact that this guy's cameraman had been working for Anderlin for 10 years and sending him fake footage all the time,
Knowingly.
and it didn't bother Anderlin, something clicked in me, because viewing the Reuters footage, the 2 hours with Nachum Shachaf, the first guy to investigate it, you know, I could see that they fake it. It's clear. It's a street. It's a game. You go in the street, you fake an injury, people carry you to the ambulance, and you see if you made it sufficiently believable that the news would then show it. Right? So kind of competition, street theater. Okay, and it's pickup. It's spontaneous. It's actually, some of it's staged and there's makeup and so on, but okay. So I knew they faked it, but I did not understand that Western journalists, professional Western journalists, would not view this as unacceptable, would not fire their Palestinian journalists, but rather rummage through the footage they gave them and look for the most believable sound bites and string them together and then show and sort of B-roll in the background while you say, and 500 Palestinians were killed today by Israel. And you see all this footage, and it sure makes it sound like that's what was happening.
So the New York Times and the BBC and CNN and the Washington, I mean, where do we end, right? They keep putting out these fake stories and photos, and they keep claiming that it was an error. I mean, obviously there was a very famous Tablet magazine article in 2014 by Mati Friedman that exposed the media strategy of whitewashing all media about Israel to make it always look like Israel is the bad guy. Now what happened to media accountability? It sounds like they are complicit and this is deliberate. Would you agree?
Oh, hold on. Let me just finish the story I was telling, which is, as I walked out of the office, Anderlin's office, and thinking about what he had said to me, I realized that it's not just Palestinian state stuff, but the Western media uses it. And that's when it occurred to me, this is an industry. And that's when the term Pallywood occurred to me. It's like Bollywood. It's a national industry. And it's a national industry showing either brave Palestinians shooting at empty walls. Seriously, it's in the movie. Go see Pallywood. Shooting at empty walls, or being injured and carried away in ambulances, right? So it's B-roll, but then it can become A-roll. You can get actual stuff that's a blood libel, like the Aldura affair. So as to the question you just asked me, it's hard to say. I mean, I showed this to a number of people in the media. One person who acknowledged that it was fake said to me, "I don't think there's a lot of appetite for this." In other words, this was a rival to CBS. I mean, CBS had done a whole thing using the Aldura stuff. So I was going to ABC and saying, here's your rival just got caught. And I'm told, no, there's no appetite for this. We're not ready to take this on. At WGBH, I talked to somebody, an Israeli who was working with WGBH. He said, unless we have examples of Israelis doing this, we can't run this.
Okay.
No, we can't say that the Palestinians fake it if we can't also be even-handed and say the Israelis do it. And I said, and if the Israelis don't do it, he says, then we can't run it. So there was a lot of resistance to this. Do they understand that they're running fakes? At some level, they have to. I mean, when the New York Times has that picture of the Madonna holding the skeletal child of hers, I don't know if it was the New York Times, but by the time that picture made it to the Times, the perfectly reasonably fed boy in the frame had been removed from the frame.
Right.
Right. And this is exactly what Aldelan did when he showed the footage that he got from his Palestinian cameraman of the shooting of Muhammad Abdullah. There's a final scene in which the boy who has been shot in the stomach, but for some reason is holding his hands over his eyes, picks up his elbow and looks out at the camera and then slowly puts his elbow down. Now, that's a dead giveaway. Anybody looking at that would say, this kid's not dead. And yet he cut that and claimed that it was the death throes and that it was unbearable to watch. Okay. So clipping this stuff, making it acceptable, making it believable is part of the game, and they engage in it. And I honestly don't know if they do it on purpose or do it, it's just so routine that they don't think about it. But one thing that's absolutely, I mean, this I'm willing to go to the mat on. If you look at the footage from that CNN runs, at no point, it seems, have they ever asked themselves if this is honest footage, if this is footage of what it claims to be. I think what they ask themselves is this believable footage? Okay, so we have a case of twins in Gaza who the father went out to register their births, and when he came back, they were dead. Okay, and you have the father weeping. And first of all, the weeping is strange, it's very exaggerated. Muslim men, most men don't get enormously emotional at funerals. But here he's collapsing on the floor and being picked up like a baby and stuff. And you can see in the faces on the side that there are smiles because they know he's acting. And that gets cut, right? So I think that what you're dealing with is, I don't know. I can't answer the question. Do they know what they're doing? If they don't, we're talking about a case psychological study of denial.
Well, they're editing it, therefore it's deliberate. But I guess my next question is this a lack of journalistic standards, or are these double standards? Because as we know, double standards are anti-Semitic, but do you think they're doing the same thing with Russia and Ukraine, with India, Pakistan?
I don't know. I will say they're doing the same thing with Iran. In other words, when Israel was bombing Iran, they were running figures from the Iranian state media saying that, you know, the Israelis had killed 236, mostly civilians.
But that's still the double standard, not the journalistic standard.
Well, that's, yes, no. What we're dealing with, I mean, in the case of the Arab-Israeli conflict, the characteristic is really quite set, which is whatever the Palestinians say you believe, whatever the Israelis say you disbelieve. And you can see it when they'll quote an Israeli source. I'm actually collecting these passages. They'll quote an Israeli source, and the next paragraph begins with "but." Right? They don't do that with Palestinians. When Palestinians make claims, they go interview people from the UN and from the NGOs to reinforce the claim. So, and if anything, they use the Palestinian narrative to undermine the Israeli narrative. So in the case of Al-Ahli Hospital, when Jake Tapper was finally told by an Israeli official that it wasn't the hospital, it was the parking lot, and it couldn't possibly have been 500 people. No,
or the IDF.
Just told it was a parking lot and it wasn't the IDF. His response was, how can you say that when so many people died? In other words, he had
Right.
already accepted that
Sure.
other people had died, and the position that Israel had was automatically undermined in
Right.
his mind by the fact that he had already accepted about 500 people dead. So you're in a situation where, yes, it's a double standard. It's a massive failure of professional journalism. There's no, and they don't, not only are they dupes and credulous of anything the Palestinians say
Mhm.
and don't look into anything, but on top of it, they don't correct. And even when they correct, they don't learn from the correction. So it's the pattern is set and it continues, and there's no there's no,
Hiroshima.
yeah, no self-correction,
Sure.
no, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I see the analogy as when a lawyer is in a case, right? He'll say things that he knows will be stricken by the from the record, but you can't unhear it.
Right.
And so what happens is, like, so for example, with the New York Times Madonna fiasco, which was so widely debunked, when they, first of all, they're so
When they
it-
acknowledge the mistake.
right. First of all, they didn't even put it on the New York Times Twitter feed. They put it on a secondary New York Times like correction feed that nobody follows. But then it was such a qualified apology, like, yes, it turns out that the kid has, whatever, has whatever it was, I don't know, cerebral palsy, whatever it was. But what this photo proves is that because of hunger, his disease is that much worse. That wasn't the story, but they couldn't even just say,
No.
we apologize. And when the BBC is caught using a Hamas child for fake footage in their, their whatever you call it, miniseries, short, whatever it was, you're right. There's no like self-reflection. It's like, oh, well, our bad. We'll take it down.
Yeah.
End of story. 10 billion people already watched it, but
Right. And so this is the same thing with the Jenin massacre and so on. There's so the pattern of lethal journalism is the Palestinians claim really nasty stuff. We're not talking about just, oh, we got hurt. It's, oh, the Israelis deliberately tried to kill our children. So the Palestinians make these ferocious accusations, and the Israelis, when they get around to investigating it and saying, no, we weren't there, we didn't do it, whatever, the response is to disbelieve the Israelis, to fall silent, and then go to the next claim, the next Palestinian claim. So there's a constant, and so you get, for instance, in Lebanon in 2006, there was a place in Kafar Khana that got bombed. And, they claim that I think 65 people were killed. Well, in the end, it was 28. None of the corpses looked like kids. One that was paraded around. But, once you've said 65 and then Israel says, but it's only 628,
right.
and you have these sort of people, journalists, who sound like they're sophomores at 2 o'clock in the morning in their college room saying one baby suffering is unbearable.
Right.
Well, I hate to tell you, but babies suffer, and they are suffering all over the world, and there are many more babies suffering in Somalia, which gets no news.
That's right. No Jews, no news. And I do want to just say to anybody who's listening, this conversation isn't to mitigate the casualties of war, which are horrific. War is horrific. It's the lies that surround it that are so detrimental, not just to truth, but also to morality. Online, anytime that I try or anybody tries to defend a position by using Israeli sources,
Right.
people automatically like, oh yeah, well, that's the J post. I'm like, Okay, well,
Right.
what about every other source that
Yeah.
happens to be using? And 97% of all articles out there are using the Gaza Health Ministry information
Right.
as gospel. 97%. And speaking of 97,
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
like,
CNN, even when they say this is from the Gaza Ministry of Health, or even the Hamas-controlled Gaza Ministry of Health, they then proceed to use those figures as facts. So even though they've warned you that these figures may be problematic, they don't consider them problematic at all.
yeah. So because you're that guy who coined the term Pallywood,
Yeah.
I have just a little technical question. Would you consider the mass media to be a cog in the Pallywood machine, or are they auxiliary? What does Pallywood refer to? The actual production or the whole horizontal?
Right, the whole horizontal. In other words, it refers to the fakes going on and their recycling as news. Now, the industry, Pallywood industry, is a Palestinian specialty. But it would have no impact were it not for the media. And in fact, I think I would be willing, as a historian who studies the dynamics of situations, I would be willing to say that if the media were to all of a sudden discover a brain and start examining the footage they get from Palestinians for signs of fakes, the way Mr. Gazawood does, that the very strategy, which Dershowitz called the cannibal strategy, I call it the human sacrifice strategy, the strategy of getting Gazans killed in order to blame Israel for it wouldn't work.
And this circles back to the concept of the medievalism versus Western values.
Yeah.
Can we tie that right back to what do you see as the parallels between medieval world and today's world in the Arab and or Gaza and Middle East?
Okay, so the first thing you mentioned that I study honor shame culture. In an honor shame culture, it is legitimate, expected, even required that you shed blood for the sake of your honor. If somebody's insulted you in public, if you don't deeply hurt that person, if you don't draw blood from that person, your reputation is ruined. So we're dealing with a situation in which, and that can affect religion. It can affect what we loosely call monotheism, because both Christianity and Islam in the medieval period, Islam still, but Christianity to a significantly lesser extent, were, if you will, committed to what I call triumphalist religiosity. And triumphalist religiosity is the honor of my religion must dominate the public sphere. People must recognize that my religion is superior to all other religions. And if that's not the case, I begin to have doubts about my religion. And therefore, I must make sure that that religion dominates. And that, I think, is what's driving the Palestinian and more broadly Muslim hostility to Israel. I think that's what's driving global jihad and their hostility to the West. And so in that sense, if you don't understand how powerful the need to have visible honor over other people, you can't understand what's going on. And that's what happened with the Oslo peace process. For Arafat, it wasn't a peace process, it was a war process. You give us whatever we can get, and we'll continue the war from the better position. We called it a Trojan horse.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. So that's one dimension of it. The other dimension of it is that in an honor shame culture, lying is completely allowed. I mean, you shouldn't lie to really close friends, but lying to outsiders, of course you can lie to outsiders. In fact, there are some cultures in which they lie to you just to test and see how stupid you are. And we are stupid. The West is being lied to constantly, and it seems to be incapable of questioning the veracity of the reports that they get from the Palestinian and Arab world.
Sorry, I'm realizing that the
That's right.
plug is not working. Please keep talking, but I can't have my phone down.
So that gets back to the thing about staging, is that people don't seem to be able to imagine that you would have a culture
Sorry.
in which you literally considered deception and lying to be a perfectly legitimate way to proceed. You know, as I think there was a famous remark by Ehud Barak after Camp David. He said, you know, they just constantly lie. Well, so what about this guy? And they'll say, never heard of him. And of course they've heard of him. And then we show that they know him and they go, and they go on. And he said, you know, look, I've heard from people that there are Arabs who can pass lie detector tests because lying does not create the kind of internal turmoil that gets picked up by the lie detector.
So what do you say when people say that that kind of statement is Islamophobic?
Yes, all right. So they'll say it's Islamophobic and racist.
Mhm.
The first point is it's about culture. It's not about race. Second thing is, I have no doubt that there are, and I hope there are many Muslims who are honest people. However,
Sure.
it is absolutely clear that the triumphalist Muslims, for whom the honor of Islam is more important than anything else, are willing and even eager to lie in order to advance their cause. And if that's Islamophobic, you know, look, I mean, the Nazis lied too. It's not, you know, it's not just Muslims who get hooked into these incredibly destructive, violent, hateful movements and try and dominate the world. They just happen to be the current version.
How would you compare Nazi propaganda to Gaza propaganda?
Well, you know, it's interesting. A couple of things I'd say. First of all, I am unaware that at any point during the entire period of Nazi rule, that there were priests and ministers who were preaching genocide from the pulpit. By and large, these were things that the Nazis kept under cover. They weren't proud of it. In the Palestinian territories, both in the PA and in Hamas, they are openly preaching genocide from the pulpit. There's a terrible hadith that they resurrected, the Mufti of Jerusalem resurrected in the late 30s, that says before the day of judgment comes, the Muslim will rise up and he will kill the Jews, and the Jews will hide behind rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees will say, oh, Muslim, O servant of Allah, there's a Jew behind me, come kill him.
What's a hadith?
Hadith is a saying of Muhammad. It's not in the Quran, but it's a saying attributed to Muhammad, and all four schools accept this as genuine hadith. All right, so so one thing you've got is openly genocide. The second thing is they engaged in what are called the Great Lethal Projection. So here are the Nazis. They're planning on conquering the world and enslaving the non-Aryan races. And they're accusing Israel via the protocols of the Elders of Zion, accusing the Jews of wanting to do exactly what they want to do. In the same way, today we have the Palestinians who openly embrace genocidal goals, accusing Israel of being genocidal. And you saw that in a particularly grotesque way, you know, after October 7th, the day after Hamas was accusing Israel of committing genocide. So they had just done a 24-hour orgy of genocide, of the most sadistic and vicious kind you can imagine. And then the next day they accuse Israel. And if you go through the last 2 years of CNN transcripts and look for the word genocide, not once does it appear in reference to the Palestinians. It only appears in reference to the Israelis.
And that's more than just a false equivocation of not mentioning both. The fact is that the definition of genocide has to do with intent. And that's why what occurred on 10/7 was a genocide, but war, if what Israel is doing in Gaza, which includes unprecedented measures to protect the civilian population, if that's a genocide, then all war is genocide.
Right.
The
It's
perversion.
an absurd accusation. Actually, there's a thing going around now that the Israelis have dropped 100 times more tons of bombs
Mhm,
on Gaza than the Americans dropped on Japan.
mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
Now, the number of people that Americans killed when they dropped that tiny number of bombs is
That's right.
10 times, 50 times greater than what Israel's killed in Gaza. So it's pretty clear that this is not intent. It's not anything approaching. And yet it's become literally an article of faith among other things, a branch of the Democratic Party.
That's a whole nother discussion. No, we're gonna stick with Gazawood today. I can't say I disagree. I'm not saying this to shut you down.
Right.
But I also do want Mr. Gazawood over here to have a chance to present as well. But sadly, I will say on that note, and as a very proud member who is not paid by AIPAC, I just have to say that maintaining the bipartisan support of Israel is the single most important thing that we can do as Americans. And the fact that the Democratic Party has veered away from what really is not just about Israel, but Western values is frightening.
Western values and the Western world.
The Western world.
I mean, the amazing thing is here are these journalists who thrive because they're a member of a society that respects a free press and protects a free press, who are systematically helping an organization which has no respect whatsoever for a free press and will kill anybody that gets in their way. So it's this sort of astonishing, as I said, own goal journalism. They're literally scoring goals against their own. One last comment before we go to Mr. Gazawood. The earliest case of a cognitive war that we have on record is Troy.
Okay.
Okay, and that was the Trojan horse.
Right.
And in order to get the Trojans to buy it, they left a guy who faked pretending he was run away from the Greeks, that this is what he heard, etc. And it was only because he seemed to be not connected to the Greeks that they believed him and brought the horse in. That's the role the media is playing today. They're making Hamas believe it.
Sure, they turned terrorism into a charm offensive.
Right.
And when have we ever seen this before? The answer is never. Nobody looked at ISIS cutting heads off of Americans and in saying, oh, that's just retribution for all the horrible things that we did. It was horrifying, but now it's like, oh, beheaded Israelis? They probably not probably. They deserved it. They brought it upon themselves. This medieval savagery. So a few more questions as Mr. Gazawood prepares for his big presentation. Is the ultimate goal of Pallywood to destroy the Jews or the Jewish state?
Oh, look, the ultimate goal of the Palestinian movement, whether it's the quote unquote moderates and quote unquote seculars amongst the Palestinian Authority or Hamas and Islamic Jihad, which are openly jihadi organizations, is to not only destroy the state of Israel, but literally to exterminate the Jews, and not just in Israel, but everywhere. So there's no question, there's no dissent, if you will. There's no daylight between the secular moderates and the religious fanatics on this particular issue. Pallywood is an extremely effective way of enabling the Palestinians to literally blackmail the West into sympathizing with them. They create the victims. They use Pallywood to blame Israel. And the West seems to feel compelled, And you don't even have to ask me. Yes, there's an element, a significant element of, shall we say, hostility to the Jews in Western receptivity in stories,
Sure.
but they literally use this as part of their insane, at least by modern liberal rational standards, their insane war of extermination against Israel, which no matter how weak they are and no matter how much damage they cause to their own people, they will not let go, to the point where they now want their people hurt, which is why out of 500 kilometers of tunnel under Gaza, there's not one public bomb shelter.
Right.
They're up there to die.
Right. So before we hand it over, I have a question that's going to be relevant to you, and then I'm going to pass it off. And perhaps Mr. Gazawood even would like to address this question. Do you think that we could have reached these levels of dangerous propaganda if it weren't for social media? Is this more of a media problem or a social media problem where one story can go around the globe in less than 10 seconds?
Well, there's no question social media intensifies everything. Listen, the Protestant Reformation only happened, there were proto-Protestant Christian descent movements throughout the Middle Ages, but until there was the printing press, you couldn't get the Protestant Revolution. Same thing with TV. Radio had a big impact on Hitler. Communications revolutions consistently empower what I call millennial apocalyptic movements, and Hamas is unquestionably, you don't even have to stretch the definition. They are an apocalyptic millennial movement. They believe they're fighting the final battle before the day of judgment, and that the Jews are, in Christian terminology, the Antichrist. So yes, social media is terribly important, but social media, you got to deal with what you're dealing with. So.
And thank goodness we have Gazawood, the Pallywood saga to expose and to publicize so many of these issues that are going on. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand this presentation over to Mr. Gazawood, and I do hope that all viewers can not only learn from this, but start consuming media with a much more critical eye.
Yes.
Mr. Gazawood, the floor is yours.
No, speaking English.
Your English is
Your
great.
English is...
If there's a word that you don't know, say it in English and we will
Or you
translate.
can just put this stuff up and we'll comment on it.
Okay.
I want him to correct this stuff. Yeah.
What should I start with?
So hit the screen share and
Okay. Okay. Is it shared?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. So there's so much to speak about in this subject. There's so much to speak about in this subject. And it's actually endless because it's like it's something cultural. It's something I don't know. I don't want to use the word production, but it might be there or almost there. It's either a cultural or a production, and both are catastrophic. Both are crazy and very dangerous for both sides, by the way, because the Palestinians are not going to gain anything from these actions. They're just going to hurt themselves and they're going to hurt us.
This isn't what's allowing them to win the propaganda war. What do you mean they have nothing to gain?
Because even if they're going to win the propaganda war, it's not like even if they're going to win the propaganda war, it's not like they're going to how you say in English, to expel us from Israel. They're not going to get what they want to expel, they want to erase Israel. That's not something possible unless you go to like a war like a very big war against Israel with all the weapons and with many countries. It's like something that's not going to happen, at least in a short term, not in 10, 20, 30 years. They can do it little by little, like the same way they're doing in Europe, in a way. And there is more chance for them to win that war in Europe than their chance to win it in Israel. Israel is aware of it. Israel is aware of the propaganda war. In Europe, and they're way more calm about it. They're not aware, and they're getting in under the radar.
Yes,
Yeah.
under the radar.
And as they said, we're gonna conquer Europe without firing even one bullet. And that's
There are two wars that they say, two forms of jihad. And one is the jihad of bullets and one is the jihad of demographics. Because when you're working with a democratic country, name the country, all you need is a critical mass and you could vote anyone you want into office and create your own reality. So people don't understand that simple things. Like, this is why immigration now is such a critical issue. In America, it's not just about cheap labor coming in from Mexico and Central America, but also are terrorists coming in? How many children are they having? Where are their cells?
Show us some.
Ken,
Okay.
yes.
Remember,
so much,
people can't believe that this is fake. So show them some obvious things.
Should we start with the fakes or with the
Start with anything you want. That's
because the
all.
current thing is the famine.
Start there.
Okay, let's go to the famine. Okay, so you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So you know what the media is trying to show us all the time. We see children with empty pots waving and
Right.
screaming in a very exaggerated way.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to show to make it look like all Gaza is this way.
Right.
First of all, even that place is not the way it actually looks like, because we're not saying that the entire scene is staged. I mean, they're displaced. These people are displaced. They're not in their homes.
Sure.
We agree about that.
They're not happy and they're not eating to their fill, but they're not starving to death.
Exactly. And if you see countless of videos of the NGOs distributing the food, everybody's calm, everybody's happy. They look, none of them looks starving, and their clothes are cleaned and ironed and everything. They look new in most places, and then you have the journalists that actually are managing that scene. When the children are coming to the place to eat, yeah.
Can you continue talking as you show images? Yes.
Okay. So when you see the children coming to they are there when the children are coming to the scene, and they're wait a second. Yeah. So they're there and they're asking the children to start screaming and acting like if they don't have food. You can, I mean, you have like איך אומרים, הבדל גדול בין הוויז'ואל לבין מחשבה מאוד פשוטה.
There's a huge difference between the, what did you say?
Visual.
Between the visual and
המחשבה הפשוטה, כאילו, שאם אני רואה את ה-NGO, את הרבה סרטונים, שכולם נראים בסדר, ומחלקים אוכל נורמל, בצורה נורמלית.
See lots of scenes in which they're eating normal food.
And you see them look good, so you have suddenly איך אומרים, התנגשות עם הוויז'ואל. אני
You
רוצה
have
שנייה לחפש.
contradiction.
So one of the most popular examples that's come out that I think he's looking at now
All right.
is the Time magazine cover that has been
No.
proven to be staged. No. Okay.
Now look at this. All right, so now the thing to look at here is, you see the girl behind her? Watch her face. This one is doing the act. This is all, people know that the staging is going on and people are smiling around, and later on, we're gonna see this young lady was just fine.
And you have countless of these kind of stuff.
Well,
And by the way,
here she is.
But can you explain what's fake about this besides the fact that they're smiling? We're still seeing a lot of people with pots who maybe they're excited, maybe they're starving, but the media's there, so they're smiling. So
No, they're not
Sorry.
smiling because the media's
No,
there.
I know,
They're smiling because they're faking it.
I understand that, but for somebody who's watching this, what is actually, there's a director, where do these kids come from? Are they at a GHF place? What, do we know the context? What's going on here?
they live in tents because the area that they used to live is a battle field now, and I get told them to leave for a few weeks. And then while they are in the place they're living now in the tents, they have the food distribution every day. And you can see they have way more than that, according to how they are dressed and how they look. You can easily compare it to other places in the world that actually suffer from a real famine. And you see that they're always very dirty. They're all their expression is very apathic.
Yeah, it's apathetic, it's
Yeah,
blank.
they don't give much attention to the camera,
Right.
and they are definitely not screaming and crying while there is a food distribution. So when they are here and they're acting not naturally and crying and screaming, even though they know in a minute they're gonna get the food. And sometimes you can see the people where they stop crying and screaming, suddenly smiling, laughing. You understand that the scene might be real. I mean, it is real. They're not home. They're not in their homes. They can't open the fridge and take food and live the easy life they used to have. But the crime and all the act, it is staged, and the people who are telling them to do it are the journalists
Or the camera.
Exactly, yeah.
And the point of this is to tear at the heartstrings of compassionate Westerners. These journalists are clearly not compassionate. In fact, we have cases where they're taking a picture of a little girl carrying her sister, allegedly from miles. Nobody's taking the kid off the sister's shoulder. They're taking pictures of it. So we're not dealing with compassionate people. And certainly Hamas behind it is ruthless. And yet they're pulling at the heartstrings of Westerners who are compassionate. And we feel compelled to sympathize with them, because if we don't, then we wouldn't be compassionate. And I've certainly been accused, I'm sure you have, of being, lacking compassion.
It's not about that. It's lacking compassion for falsehood.
And by the way, I want to add that this is like one or two or three signs of it. But when you keep seeing many signs around it, for example, from other cases, like there is a massive huge of AI images and even videos, and they are using a massive cases from nothing even not from Gaza, from Yemen and from Sudan and from Uganda and from
Where there are
And
real
they're,
famines.
and they're calling it, do you have some examples? Please keep the,
Oh.
let's look at,
Yeah.
at various things so people can understand, but I'm not sure how well the mic is gonna work here because Mr. Gazawood is on the other side of the camera, but for anyone who didn't hear, what he's saying is that they are literally taking footage from other famines like Sudan, other wars like Syria, and considering them to be, or if presenting them as if they are Gaza. Okay.
yeah. So this is like
Can you expand the screen so that? Yeah,
this is, for example, from Iran. This video had like maybe billions of views, but at least 10 and hundreds of millions of views. Everywhere they show it with the symbol of the Palestinian flag, of course. And it's actually from, you see it in the quality, by the way.
it's okay.
We can fix it. This is right. Yeah. So it's actually from Iran. Now I could.
What year?
What? It's let's see. It's 3 months ago.
Okay,
I mean, it's 6 months ago because I found it like 3 months ago. Okay, so it's a nomadic family. That's how.
Yep.
yes?
Yeah, from Iran, and they do this for a living. I mean, their life is half staged, half real. They do live there, but they live with cameras, and they get monetization from YouTube channels and.
Look how clean her dress is. If
Yeah.
she's living in rubble, I mean, that dress, I hate to say it, is cleaner than most dresses I own.
And think about it, he's giving birth, I believe.
Oh, is that what she's
And the
doing?
cameraman is filming it
Okay,
instead of helping. So of course it is staged. I saw even the baby later. It's not even a real birth, but
was it a baby doll? What
no,
came
it
out?
was like 4 or 5 months old
Oh,
baby.
okay.
It wasn't a new baby. She probably wasn't pregnant. Maybe she was pregnant a year ago. But
Okay,
it's like half stage. I'm not gonna call it the full stage, and it's not even from Gaza. It's from Iran.
mm-hmm.
And like this case, you have endless of cases in pictures they use from Yemen and all these countries that might look a little bit alike, mostly from Syria, and that is another sign. Why would you use so many cases from other countries if you can easily get endless of cases from Gaza itself?
Sure.
And why would you show so many genetically ill children from Gaza and try to sell it as if they're starving, if you have so many children that are actually starving?
What is the answer to that? I mean, why not just use correct footage? If there really are these things, and listen, we can't deny, even though it's caused by Hamas, we cannot deny that there's some food and famine issues because Hamas, it was just reported, is stealing about 90% of the UN aid right now. So let's put that aside where it's coming from. There is food insecurity and or famine in parts of Gaza. Why do they feel like they need to, on top of it, stage these photos and videos?
Because they actually,
Can we go to another?
Yeah, keep
video?
it, yeah.
because they actually don't have many cases, or maybe at all, of cases where they are they have people who look like if they are in a real family. That's the simplest answer to this. They haven't managed to found yet a single case of a person who is thin to bones that is not ill or something near that. And in the same way, they weren't able to show, even though they're claiming like 60 people were shot every day, they weren't able to show a single case of an IDF soldier shooting a person.
Right.
That's
Or-
Whereas there's a lot of footage of Hamas shooting people.
Let's
Or
go,
that
for
is-
example, to the massacre in Syria. In 24 hours of massacre against the Jews, you have like maybe 500 footages of people. I mean, full footages of people shooting and killing other people. And you don't have a single footage of an IDF soldier, I mean, a full footage shooting Gazan and killing him, even though we're speaking about the most documented war ever,
Mhm.
like 100 times more. It's like they have cameras everywhere. Their journalists are always ready. The public, the citizens of Gaza, they
Mhm.
know their job. They need
Mhm.
to capture all the. That's what they do.
Right,
They're the best at it.
sure.
And they weren't able to find and show a single case. That says everything.
Yeah, plus the fact that they're claiming that these people are being killed by tank fire, which would blow them to smithereens. A person cannot handle tank fire. If we could keep scrolling through different examples and you can talk to them and explain them. I don't know if you have. Okay, sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but
It is laughable.
it is laughable and it's pathetic that people, I mean, the second I look at this, I'm like, okay, what is that, a biology classroom?
Right.
But people, young people, sometimes will see it. I mean, mostly, let's speak about the audience on TikTok. They don't know much about the world. They learn the world through TikTok. They're still young. And when they see this, they're sure that an IDF soldier killed a person and hanged them through the window. And they're not stopping and asking themselves how the bones
Yeah, clean themselves of all guts and skin
Yeah.
and debris and,
themselves because
right,
they
no
don't have-
ligaments, no tendons.
It's like very, very, very stupid propaganda. Like it's a very low level propaganda, but they do it in masses and they do it fast.
The original title of my book before it was Can the Whole World Be Wrong? Was They're So Smart Because We're So Stupid. Because what is so stunning is how bad this stuff is. The Abdullah story is just cheap fakes. It's just it's fifth rate at best, and yet we buy it.
Was that the first example that
That's
you
the
would
first.
say of Pallywood?
Well, I did a history of my blog, the OGN Stables. I have an essay on the history of Pallywood, and I take it back to the Lebanon War in '82,
Mm-hmm.
where the Lebanese Red Crescent, headed by Arafat's brother, totally misinformed the West about what was happening. But and certainly during the first Intifada, there was a lot of staged footage. But Abdullah was the first massive success. Up until then, the Palestinians have been accusing the Israelis of killing kids deliberately. Nobody believed them. After that, everybody believed it every time a Palestinian said they did it on purpose. So, yeah, Abdullah really is a turning point. It's in the year 2000.
Yeah.
And for the last 25 years. So what you're looking at, can you show the one of
People who are so hungry, they're eating rocks.
Yeah, this is actually they didn't do this thing a year and a half ago, but during the time of the war, every time they test a little bit more,
how
how-
stupid we are?
exactly
Right.
how stupid their audience.
And they go, hey, we could do this.
Yeah, exactly. Every time they go a little bit lower, and they see if the audience still believes it.
I can't wait to see the comments on this video where someone says, yes, they're actually eating rocks.
And sand, like the sand, the
They're
eating sand
cooking
was
rocks.
an old trend in Gaza.
Right.
Not even in Yemen, anywhere.
And it made it onto CNN. I mean, Christian Amanpour, I believe, introduced a section where a kid is picking up, eating sand in a very angry way. We're not talking
Mhm.
about somebody starving who's, can barely move. We're talking about somebody grabbing it, throwing it in his mouth and looking at the camera angry, like, why aren't you doing something to help me?
Mhm.
And that is, during the brief period where the Israelis were exchanging fire with Iran, and the world was more interested in that than Gaza. The Gazans were complaining, "Hey, you've forgotten us." I mean, they literally live on the attention that they get, and they can't survive without it.
What are we looking at here?
This is one example of how like 30-40% of the scenes of the dead people that were shot by sniper or
Oh, he was shot by a
look
sniper?
like.
This guy with no blood was shot by a sniper?
Exactly. Not only these guys, thousands of guys like this. They're well dressed, they're clean, not a drop of blood, and they're intact. And you can see their color, the body color, which is still okay. And
Right.
you have countless of scenes like this. I myself, I have like 30,000 files.
Yeah, you got the
videos.
one of the father holding his hand up in the air with the child who then scratches his leg or something.
So let me ask a question that actually I have, and also somebody, Sadananda put in the chat, which is regarding Al Jazeera. We know that Al Jazeera, of course, is controlled by Qatar. And Qatar, of course, is going to be a purveyor of all the Pallywood lies. How much influence does Qatar have on the mass media, on CNN, on NPR, on BBC, on New York Times?
I think they have a tremendous. I think they have a tremendous influence. I mean, if you offer people enough money, they would not only say what you want them to say, they would little by little start believing it. In their brains, they're gonna cut the logical questions from. For example, I saw today an article from
It's like a Cypriot newspaper.
where they're actually accusing us for saying everything in Gaza is staged. We never say that, by the way. We say that it's partly staged or there is a lot of staging. And by the way, I just want to add that if someone says there is no staging in Gaza, that's ridiculous. The only question is how much of it is
Right.
staged. Because I can show you, for example, 1,000 cases that are 100% staged. For example, this one or many others, like we saw, the people eating stones.
How do we know this one's staged?
Because the boy is scratching his leg.
All right, so
And
this
Wait,
is a
which
father.
boy is scratching
You'll
his
see
leg?
it in a
Yeah.
moment. The one
Same
in
boy.
the sentence, same,
the-
three different videos.
Well,
So he's
Right.
crying over his dead child,
Mhm.
and then,
And he's smiling.
no, not necessarily, but
he-
possibly.
By the way,
Right.
it's the same soundtrack, the same voice, the same speech every time. And I mean, he's not repeating it. It might be even recorded from before. And when he's far from the camera, you wouldn't hear him so well. So
Do you,
it might be have a microphone or something.
do you speak Arabic? I mean, because one concern also is that perhaps the translations aren't always accurate.
I have the people in my group that are Arabic speaker. They're from Arabic countries. By the way, that's something amazing that I get a lot of help from Arab people. I wanted this is something very unusual that I found deleted.
I discovered.
I discovered during the time in Gaza. People from the West, they tell me, how can you say it's staged? It's not.
And people from the Arab world
Yeah.
who say, of course it's staged.
But we hate it. That's what they said.
Mm-hmm.
Or they tell me it's staged and we gotta help you because that's not the way. I mean, the Arabs are not believing the Palestinians, but they want to help them because they're more connected to them than to us and to the West.
Why do you think they don't believe them?
Because they're more
They're used to it. They know this
Okay.
is part of the culture. It's not, they look at this stuff and they're completely familiar with these techniques. Whereas the West looks at this stuff and can't allow itself to question.
it's a cultural thing. I want to say an opposite example. For example, you have Palestinians or pro-Palestinians influencers that are actually teasing Israeli soldiers
Right.
and telling them you are killing babies, for example. And the
Mhm.
Israeli soldier is replying and saying, yeah, we're killing babies. In Israel is like, say whatever you want. But when a Western person sees it, he thinks that the Israeli is actually admitting what he has done.
Right.
But the thing is that the way we speak is very different. The slangs, everything is very different. So same thing.
Sarcasm.
Yeah. Same thing about the Arabs. The Palestinians are actually Arabs. They came from countries around Israel when the Zionists they started building Israel. This case is actually from Turkey.
What is the context? So she's getting a lollipop. What's the context here?
It's like showing suffering and starving and girl living among the rubble, but and it got also the same millions and billions of views, and people thought, still think she's from Gaza, but she's from Turkey.
Let's go to the restaurants.
What's
Okay,
Okay.
because this is really huge. We're looking at pictures of Gazans who are dying from hunger. Now, let's just for a moment pretend, or let's just for a moment accept, ignore all the stuff about genetic stuff and about pictures from the rest of the world. Let's just take them all for granted and say, yes, there are people who are starving to death in Gaza. Meantime, at the same time as they're starving to death, we have restaurants, Palestinian restaurants in Gaza, who are advertising on Instagram what a wonderful place it is, how much food they have, how many people come to enjoy it, and so on. So you're looking, and France 24 finally got annoyed with Mr. Gazawood because he was showing these pictures of restaurants, and they did an article just today denying.
coming from outside, so you see it's something different. These videos are more better, helping better to understand, because sometimes I'm accused of like trying to show footages from before the war, but it's not. Here you can see the rubble and you can see everything.
So the point about this is that what we're dealing with in Gaza is literally a two-tiered society in which Hamas, its journalists, its elite go to these restaurants where there's plenty of food while other people are starving, and it's Hamas that's engineering that starving. And the West is being convinced by these unbelievably cruel people, who, again, this is a medieval pattern, the rich eat and the poor starve. By these unbelievably cruel people, the West feels compelled to take their side against Israel. So, I mean, it's like stunning.
This is the cafe itself that is posting this as
Yes.
sort of like their
Yes.
Instagram online advertising.
Right.
And this woman, I'm not saying it's real, apparently has an Yves Saint Laurent bag with her as well.
Yeah, no, this is a wealthy elite.
Where are they? Are they in Gaza City? What happens when the occupation comes?
Usually in there are places in Gaza that are most or fully destroyed,
Mhm.
but these are not. These are like מקומות נקודתיים.
These are specific places.
So, and you have places like Gaza City or Not Soyad or Khan Yunis, but these places are less than half the story.
Mhm.
In Not Soyad is nearly intact, So in these places, you have many restaurants. Sometimes they're having a little bit difficulties with certain products, but they have most of it. Same as we had in Israel when Iran attacked, and then you go to some supermarket and you
Shortages
can't
of
find
butter.
something, waffles,
yeah.
or I don't know, something else. But you have other products that you can live on it. And so it's the same, almost the same case in Gaza. It's a little bit more difficult in Gaza for sure, but you have like most of the stuff in these places.
What about the photos of the bullets in babies' heads and throats? Do you have those photos? Because again, like when it comes to gullibility, the question is, we already know that perhaps we have a very unsophisticated public that we're dealing with.
But
I
how
have
can the New York Times?
Exactly. How can the New York Times think that a bullet is just going to sit in a baby's head, look like a bullet, the head intact,
Yeah,
and
Because when we're asking a doctor if
do you
they-
have the photos, or
yeah, it can take
you could probably just Google them if they're not on your site, because they were pretty well,
I have it, but I don't know
propagated.
if I can go so
Yeah,
much,
maybe just do a Google search for bullets in babies' heads, New York
no, do
Times.
600 doctors.
Oh, not bullets in babies' heads?
No, the title was 600 doctors
Got it.
accuse Israel of targeting babies.
600
within that.
doctors.
this one.
Yeah, that's it.
So,
The question is if
I mean, it's literally, I would just go to the left one, that
this one,
the one on the far left, yeah. So for anybody, can you expand it to full screen? For anybody who saw this, even the bullet looks like a cartoon. The way that it's in there is so ludicrous. Can you expand the photo?
I can-
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, yeah.
So a
And that
baby's,
story was killed. In other words, I remember I was involved. I took interviews with a number of places, and then they just dropped the story.
but after it was printed.
Oh, yeah, no, they dropped the counter story. In other words,
Oh,
this stuff is clearly fake. The accusations of fake were coming out, and somehow the Times managed to kill that story, to kill the counter story. No, the story that they put out was huge and had a huge impact on people's attitude.
right.
Right.
If we look at this, the one on the right, the bullet apparently entered from on top,
Right,
where there's no sort of concussion or breakage in the skull.
right.
And this person this child may have, if you read the caption, can come in either dead or critical. Maybe the bullet just went straight into his head. He had a very extra
And
strong
stopped.
head. Yes, and stopped
Stop.
fully intact.
Untouched, fully intact. I mean, it's just breathtaking that this would be taken seriously. As if even an adult's brain matter would stop a bullet, much less an infant's.
The bullets also explode. They don't just go in like a bullet and then they just sit there in the middle of a throat. I mean, even if your brain had enough mass to stop a bullet, what's in that kid's throat that just made it like stop in the middle? Apparently having gone in through the eye, looking at the angle, and again, we see no damage to the skull or the face. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of like critical intelligence to discern that this is completely fake, and yet the mass media runs with it because it sells papers.
Clickbait. Clickbait, we even have, you have that picture of the Gazan boy who's faking crying and somebody saying, no, do it better, we'll get more clicks that way.
yeah. It's gonna take,
Or whatever you have queued up, I'm sure it's all good.
Yeah,
The fact is that if you look on top of the screen, you'll see how many things he has queued up. There is no shortage of these
Oh, this is it.
stories.
this is it, watch this guy.
And can we just say that
wait. Okay. Let me try to find it in English.
And let me just add here that even though the subtitles are in Hebrew, it's because it's a Hebrew channel that is translating it. These people are not speaking in Hebrew. These are not Jewish people who are acting. If you know Arabic or Hebrew, when you hear them speak, you'll know it's not Hebrew. Not sure why the lights just went out. Do we know how long we have this one for? Welcome to live TV, where the lights go out in the middle of the production. So,
But
meanwhile,
let me go back to a point that you asked
Okay.
earlier, which is if there are real incidents, why do they fake them?
yes,
And I think that one of the most important elements of the fake is what woman who first introduced me to all of this stuff, Nidra Polar, an American journalist living in Paris, said she calls them lethal narratives. And so the point is not, oh, look at us suffering. It's look at the Israelis deliberately making us suffer. So the staging is to sort of stick it in your face, to bring it home. You know, not only would the Israelis never do this, but the Ukrainians also don't do this. You don't have an industry of Ukrainians trying to show how much they suffered. But this is literally the national film
narrative,
industry
sure.
of the Palestinians. It's the more faking there is, the more lethal the story that they're telling. So I mentioned the story of the two kids, the two twins who were killed while their father was out, you know, and he comes back and he's got two laminated birth certificates. Nobody laminates birth certificates. In Gaza, they laminate you're not even supposed to laminate birth certificates. And yet, for the props, that's exactly what he's got. And it just never occurs. Okay, so this is it. Turn up the sound. Yeah. Oh, it's stuck.
It's frozen. Okay, just because some people are going to be listening to this without seeing it, what did we just look at?
I just looked at a boy who's being told by the person he's having a phone conversation with to act up so that they can get clicks. And he starts crying into the phone and hiding his face because he's actually smiling.
And then he starts
Right.
laughing.
Here's a gentleman who clearly is not lacking calories.
It's from this week, by the way.
This week.
Okay, so this week it's people who seem to be gathering flour perhaps
It's even these guys.
Ken
Everybody.
cheering, smiling, not
Full of
just
energy.
not just normal weight, but these are actual overweight people.
Yes.
And so this also, quite frankly, begs the question that we all know that Hamas is eating well while the people starve. But if people are so concerned about their own people, which in fact in Gaza they're not, they would share this food that's keeping them fat. It's just like the picture of the mother Madonna, who is clearly well fed. If her child is starving to death, you'd think that maybe she'd give him a piece of pita of her own. So is this a reporter? Who is this person?
This is an activist who
Oh, an
lives in
activist.
Gaza today. She's showing people the stuff we see on the right. And when she finishes filming this scene, she goes to a restaurant. It's from the same time.
why would she want to make videos that show that she's eating well in Gaza if she's trying to prove the
okay.
opposite?
She has one account for this type of followers, and she has another account for other type of followers. And people of, I think she understands the same thing that people in Gaza understand. You don't need to
Hide.
hide. You don't need to be very smart about it. The
Mhm.
propaganda is very low. People will buy it anyways.
Right.
I want to show you one more thing.
Okay.
I hope I'll find it.
I hope by now people are understanding that these are not random issues. This is an industry. This is an industry not just to compete with Hollywood. This is an industry literally created to destroy the Jewish state. And again, like it's this whole victim blaming mentality of taking everything that Israel was actually a victim of, trying to turn it on Israel, turning them into the oppressor, and portraying themselves, the people of Gaza, as the ultimate victim with no context, as in they started this war with the worst massacre in Western civilization since World War II. But nobody seems to care about that like historical moment. And so all it is Israel is the aggressor. So we're looking at more food here.
On the right, it shows how it actually has nothing. On the left is showing the regular videos it shows every day. Because he's a chef and he still is making this food and showing people how he eats. But he understands that people also wants to see that there is no food in Gaza. So he does both. This type of video.
So it's like the activist account. It's
Yeah.
the same thing.
I have countless of these ones. And for example, I just saw.
What do we have beyond food?
Let's-
This is a lot of food, but
Right.
what
Let me just say
Yeah.
one more thing about
Two
this.
cameramen, two journalists, famous journalists who you can see their stuff on CNN and BBC, etc. They are filming this scene in the morning, and 1 hour later they say IDF struck these children and
Right.
killed them. There are more footages of the carousel with blood and with the shoes of the children. You don't see the bodies of the children, but this is something that people don't understand. When you are a journalist, you go with your professional camera and you film something, and 5 minutes later you feel the same thing destroyed, means in most cases that you know it's about to happen. This is some kind of Pallywood that you need a little bit more of critical thinking to understand its stage. Because the only place where you can film such thing is in Hollywood, in a studio, when you know in a set, when you know before what's going to happen. So this kind of thing, it's just an example. You have again hundreds and thousands of scenes with the same pattern. They film the person before, and they film after the strike. And you always should ask yourself, how did they know the IDF is going to strike it? And the same question is about the famous airstrikes that you see all the time, because they film the airstrike itself. They are standing like 1 mile away with like 10-20 cameras ready, and they film the airstrike. How do they know the airstrike is about to strike? It's because the IDF is calling them like 30 minutes ahead, sometimes 2 hours ahead, and warning them to evacuate the building because there is a terror base there, and we're about to hit it.
right.
And I have thousands of these airstrike filming ahead of כאילו צילומים לפני, how you say?
Right.
Before.
Yeah, before.
and-
And after that, 2-3 hours later, the same journalists are coming
Mhm.
out with scenes,
Mhm.
with the footages from the scene that they capture the same missile from a
Okay.
mile away, and they're pulling out 10, 20 bodies and injured people. And if it happens only once, you say, okay, they didn't get the warning. The people inside the building didn't get the warning. Something happened, and the journalists knew, but they didn't know.
Where they
But it's
wouldn't,
every time again. They film from far away, and
Mhm.
then when they're in the scene, on the scene, they're filming how they pulling out bodies. So are you telling me that only the journalists got the evacuation warning? It's not how it works. So you know that it's staged or half staged or
And let's also keep in mind that a lot of times, so the IDF warns before they strike, but a lot of times when they're striking in what seems to be a humanitarian or civilian zone, is because Hamas is actually shooting RPGs and rockets from people's kitchens and underneath their houses and from nursery schools and mosques. And what they do is they do this to provoke the strike so that people can say, oh, Israel just shot at an elementary school. Well, first of all, no kid has been in that elementary school since October 2023. But if you shoot a missile from a location, civilian or otherwise, you are now a legitimate military target. So a lot of times these attacks that are staged are provoked deliberately. So let's do one or two more. And because we just passed an hour and a half, unless there's a lot more that you
there is
specifically
a
want to
lot
make.
more.
No, I know there's a lot more,
But-
but I mean, if there
And
are,
visit the site.
yeah.
Check out the stuff.
So you can see that his X is at Gazawood 1, and it's also in the show notes. He's also on Facebook and Instagram. Okay, this guy. So go ahead and talk us through this.
this is a guy, an Instagram influencer, TikTok influencer, that goes every time to a different site, hides bones of his family members.
Quote unquote. You can't see that he's doing air quotes. Yes.
Yeah, I'm doing that because of many things. First of all, it's not a human bones, so he's counting on the on people of not of their not critical thinking. Because if you stop, you see that this is not human bones. But let's leave this fact and go to another sign that he actually pulls the same bones every time in a different site, and every time films himself and cries again. He has even a friend sometimes filming him, and you have it on the news, like as if it's something real. A heart-wrenching scene is a Palestinian youth collect the remains of his family, etc., which will film during the genocide.
Of course, they have
Heart-wrenching
to.
scene.
That's right.
Heart-wrenching scene. That's what it is. They're all meant to be heart-wrenching, and we are suckers. And we won't, it's like if we were so hard-hearted as to question the claims of these victims, how could we do that? Well, they made a career of playing the victim.
Theirs is a war for the amygdala, and we have been playing a war for the brain, for the intelligence. And of course, emotions are going to win over facts, right?
And pictures are incredibly powerful.
Absolutely, even when they're fake pictures. So this is okay. So this is absolutely one of my favorites of all time.
But I want to tell you something shocking about it.
Okay.
First of all, this is Muhammad V. His name, last name says a lot. but he's a journalist from Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
His footages are going many times to the CNN, BBC, etc.
Mhm.
Many of the he's let's say at the same level of Fanas al-Sharif that got killed yesterday, and he
Took this
posted
picture.
these. No, he says he didn't say he took this
Okay.
picture.
He posted it.
He posted it, yeah. And after we revealed it's fake, he added, this is an AI image.
Okay.
But I captured the first time he posted it. But what's shocking about it is that I showed this picture to many doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctors told me, look, the bones look real. So I can't say it's fake. But we know it's fake because of many signs.
In order to get to that point, it would have to be years.
So
Unless they cleaned it with a knife.
yeah. So, but the thing is that many people ask, so why aren't so many doctors around the world
Mm-hmm.
going out and speaking
Yeah.
against Pallywood?
Good question.
It's because if there is a tiny little chance that there is something real about the image, not the whole image. I mean, I asked the doctor, is this a new skeleton? He tells me, no, that's for sure. It's I can tell you it's not a new skeleton,
Right.
but the bones might be real. So then they don't want to get into it anymore. They don't want to speak against the picture, and they're never going to say it's fake.
But it doesn't make any sense. No mother would have the skeleton of a child. The whole thing is so
Doctors are
ridiculous.
not going to analyze the scene itself.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to speak only about the medical
Yeah,
signs
sure,
in
sure,
the
sure.
picture. So unless you have a ballistic expert, a forensic expert, a camera expert, and
Cinema.
cinema expert, all together in one room, analyzing these very obvious fake picture, none of them alone is going to say this is fake. So when people ask me, why aren't all the doctors in the world coming out and saying this is fake? This is one of the answers to it.
Mhm.
They also
Hope
don't
I-
want to get canceled. They don't want to get hit with accusations of Islamophobia and cruelty and
I
heartlessness.
mean,
and-
this photo is particularly ludicrous. I put this up there with the bullet in the head.
Right.
It would, for a body to completely decompose to the point where every semblance of skin, bone, intestines, organs, everything is 100% clean from it. And then the woman apparently decides this is a nice keepsake to hug at night.
Yeah. No, I mean, you don't have to, and yet, did that make it into the mainstream news media, or is that just one of the things that was circulating in
I think so.
social
One
media?
with the skeleton?
The mother with the skeleton,
Are you asking if the mainstream media show
Yeah,
portrayed
picked it
as
up.
real?
right?
Not CNN and BBC and
Mhm.
this level of
Right.
mainstream media, but for example, Palestinian, Iranian,
Yeah.
Turkish, Egyptian media did.
And I would say one more thing about this, because Israelis tend to focus on how this is meant to hurt us.
Right.
But the fact is that this kind of footage is literally incitement to hatred.
Mm-hmm.
And it has an enormous impact on the Muslim world. And so the Western media, which thinks that it's sympathizing with the Palestinians by showing this stuff, is actually enraging the Muslim world against not just Israel, all infidels. And it doesn't seem to understand this. So that, during the administration of President Obama, when Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State, they made a big deal about how, oh no, we should never say anything that would give the Muslims the impression that we're at war with them, because we don't want to encourage them to get this mindset that the West is trying to destroy Islam because that will lead them to join the jihadis. And yet this footage, which for the last 25 years, the Western media has been pouring into the public sphere as if it's true, is just the most insightful, the most powerful incitement to jihad that you can possibly imagine. And yet they seem to be literally addicted to it. There's an addiction in the West to Palestinian suffering. It's staggering.
How can we beat this Pallywood strategy and this disinformation machine? A lot of people are talking about and criticizing the IDF for not allowing journalists to embed. Of course, one of the many problems is that every journalist that gets killed in Gaza, and if you go to Gaza, you will be killed, will be blamed on Israel. But is that the solution? Is it time after 22 months for the IDF to finally allow journalists at their own precarious risk to come into Gaza? Would they be willing to show the real story, even if they did?
No, quite the contrary. They would, I mean, they've had access. We've had journalists in Gaza in 2014, and they just reported what Hamas wanted them to report. In fact, the closer they are to Hamas, the more likely they are to follow what Hamas says. So, you know, there was one journalist, there was a strike that hit a Palestinian refugee camp and killed 10 kids. Pictures of the kids all over the place. When it turned out it was a Palestinian rocket shortfall, the pictures disappeared. But in the meantime, one of the journalists said, you know, out of Gaza, away from Hamas intimidation, strike yesterday was by Hamas. So only when they were out of Gaza were they willing to, even some were willing to admit what was going on. So you can't expect, giving particularly the current crop of journalists, you can't expect them to go into Gaza and actually reveal what's going on. No.
And how much of this is fear of Muslim repercussion?
Absolutely.
And how much
Huge
is,
intimidation.
but how much is their strategy to undermine Israel? So there's yes.
Just add something on what he said.
Yes.
You have even doctors that are, let's say, I don't know how to express it correctly in English, but let's say they're a bit more honest than journalists usually. They're more a bit. I'm not expressing myself good enough, but you have the doctors in Gaza that are cooperating with the Hamas narrative.
Right.
So what is going to happen when you let journalists in?
Right. I think what you mean is doctors have more credibility because they're scientific, and theoretically there's nothing objective about the information that they're presenting.
Nothing subjective.
So you can.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Who's the one that speaks English here? Subjective. Well, I know that you're also, but that was, subjective. Forgive me.
So you can imagine how it is going to be like when a journalist has the stake.
Yeah. I think that the big problem is that the media, and again, just so desperately amplified by social media, that this is a war that truth can't win because the fictions have taken such hold.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I'm first of all, this is a deadly danger. This is not a freebie. You can't sort of, excuse my Greek, you can't piss on Israel and think that you can do it for free. You are actually encouraging deadly forces that are targeting you. So at some point, this is going to have to stop. Now, will it be too late? Will the West, will countries in Europe get Islamicized before people wake up and say, holy mackerel, we've been had? At what point will students in America realize that free Palestine has nothing to do with freeing Palestine? It's got to do with turning it into a Muslim theocracy, which will be homophobic, misogynist and genocidal. At what point will this happen? At some point it's going to happen. Is it going to be too late? I think we should try our best to make sure it's not too late.
Anything to add to that, Mr. Gazawood?
I would totally agree with what you said. I think that people are speaking about how cruel the Nazis were, but they're not speaking enough about the propaganda, the Nazi propaganda that brought them to,
Right.
gave them the access to what they wanted to do. And in a way, what happened in the Holocaust is, the propaganda has the blame of it. The propaganda is a very powerful tool. And I'm not going to say we're at the stage of like before the Holocaust, but we're not very far either.
Mhm.
And I think the Jewish people should wake up and understand there is a huge propaganda war against us.
Yeah.
This propaganda war is not in order to stop injustice against the Palestinians. The Palestinians are not doing it to stop the injustice against
Mhm.
them.
They're
doing
actually doing the injustice to the Palestinians in order to blame us.
Mhm.
blame us for their cause. Their cause is to eliminate Israel. It's very short and simple circle that anyone can understand and understand how dangerous it is. And I think that Hamas and Qatar and all the parties that are against Israel prepare themselves very well to this war. I'm not speaking about the field war,
Can
because I
Mhm.
think that for them it's like the Second World War.
agree.
The first war for them is the propaganda war. The
Agree.
rockets are something to drag Israel into the propaganda war and
Right.
lose, that
Right.
Israel is horrible in propaganda. Even the word Hasbara says everything, how terrible Israel is at propaganda.
Explain.
Hasbara is explaining what I'm doing. It's defending, it's like
Self-defense.
even
Meaning-
less. Let me please explain. This is
Right.
Hasbara.
Okay,
Let me
okay.
please explain and don't hate me. It's like
Right.
So
something-
it's sort
It's
of a
totally
more
defensive.
defensive.
It's very defensive. It's not taking the offensive. If Israel does not take the offensive, this will continue, and it can only get worse. And but I do think Israel has to be more aggressive. Look, I'll close with this. There are all sorts of accusations that Israel's committing genocide. Most people do not know that Hamas is an openly genocidal organization, and so is the PA, and that they are constantly preaching genocide. Now, Israel should be pointing that out. Israel's defense in the international court when they were accused should have said, "You want intent to commit genocide? Look at this, look at this, look at this." There are dozens and dozens and dozens of cases. You don't have to sort of take the statement of a prime minister at a very tense moment and twist it into intention to commit genocide. This is open, this is explicit, and yet nobody knows about it. And Israel isn't willing to say this because, by and large, as Mr. Gazawood points out, they're more on the defensive. They don't know how to take the offensive.
Yeah.
Israel always responds to their
Yeah.
narrative.
Doesn't get aggressive. Oh, show this guy with the bones of his family.
This one?
Yeah, and then we'll
He's
go.
showing, he says these
And
are,
watch the smiling faces.
look at the background.
Yeah. Keep.
The more
Well,
important,
you gotta admit, it's very sad that he has the bones of his family in a bowl.
look, here is about to cry, to laugh, you see the guy, right?
Yeah.
But everyone is a good actor, a better actor than the other guys.
The other guys are.
This guy, the guy who's holding the pot,
Mm-hmm.
he works, I have him in many other scenes, he works with the main journalist in Gaza. This scene was filmed by Paliwood, for example. Is the same at the same level of Anas al-Sharif. He used to work for Al Jazeera until he got injured like six months ago. And this guy who's staging this ridiculous scene, I mean, the CNN, the BBC, they still take him as someone serious.
Whatever
So
they
this
can
one-
get, they can use, they'll use it.
So this one is easy to debunk. But what about the scenes that the same Fadi al-Waidi and the same group of journalists are staging that are not that easy to debunk? And even for us, sometimes it's not easy to debunk. Sometimes they're not even showing something to debunk.
Right.
They're just showing something from far away and they're writing, Israel killed 20 people over there.
Right.
Come on, debunk it.
Right.
You can't. I need to see the scene. But they say it and
Yeah.
the world accepts it.
Yeah. The world it's complicit and I don't think that it's only not.
Complicit in its own demise. That's what's so weird. There's a joke, there was a joke, I think it's attributed to Isaiah Berlin. He said, in the 20th century, anti-Semitism is hating Jews more than absolutely necessary. But in the 21st century, anti-Semitism is hating Jews even though it's killing them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty much
You
what it
actually
is.
have a guy with that throwing sand. The camera was ready. He's giving a speech to the camera. This is like, you know how much views this scene has with Free Palestine and destroy Israel and root nail.
And how do we know someone's throwing sand?
You hear the camera is ready.
Yeah.
They're running to where the camera is. And by the way, I don't have it here. I have it somewhere, but I have like 5 same scenes from the
Right.
same guy with his family.
Right, right. So again, I do encourage everybody to follow Gazawood, the Pallywood Saga on whatever the platform of your choice is, because we could literally be here for the rest of our lives with him showing these examples. Sorry, you were going to say something
No.
else? Okay. So I think that because we're closing in on 2 hours now and you guys have been
Yes.
amazing. And again, this is a story that goes on forever. Richard, can you explain tell people the Pallywood movie, your books, where can people find you? We know where to find Gazawood.
Okay, so sorry. If you go to aldurah.com, ALDURAH.com, you can find the 3 movies I did about it and a great deal of the footage surrounding it, and so on. I recommend that you view Pallywood, also view The Faking of Muhammad Abdullah. I wrote a book called Can the Whole World Be Wrong? Came out in 2022, was reviewed by someone in 2023 saying the book that saw October 7th coming a mile away. My daughters said, because they grew up with this, they said, Dad, you were right, and we hate that you were right. It's not a pretty story. It's a terrible story, and to some extent, we don't want to believe it because it's so awful. But, pretending that you're not in a nightmare because you don't want to be in a nightmare is not a way to deal with a real nightmare, and that's what we're in right now. So, and then richard-landis.com is my website. You can find a bunch of stuff, including my medieval work on honor shame, work on millennialism, and so on.
And the links are also in the description. Mr. Gazawood, do you have anything that you'd like to add before giving the screen back to us?
Be more critical.
Yeah.
Definitely be more critical of what you're viewing. If you want to turn off the screen share for a second so we could finish this. Oh, moving corpses. Well, that's sort of scary.
Yeah, I have some moving corpses in Pallywood. That goes way back.
Yeah. Okay.
Not just moving, jumping up.
Yeah. Yes, I've seen that. Okay, so I always like to finish off with one last question, and hopefully you can both answer this.
Kill the screen.
What does Am Yisrael Chai mean to you?
Is the question for me?
For both of you. Not meant to be a funny question.
You can, I would say, let's be explain the
Explain it.
Israel in many ways. Hebrew has very few words,
Mhm.
less word than other languages, but each word can be explained in many ways. One of the ways to explain the Israel Chai means in a way survives. So in a way, that's what uncertainty means. And not harmless surviving, but we are gonna survive everything. These what we're going through now, it's something that I know, we know that if we look at it, we zoom back and we look at it from a history perspective, we're gonna look at this time as all the stories we had in the past 3,000-4,000 years. This is going to be another story. It might be a sad story or a story with a happy ending, but
We'll be there.
we'll be there. Outside, we'll survive. We're gonna. Our children are tzedzaim. How do you say tzedzaim?
Our ancestors.
Yeah.
I mean, our
They're going to
descendants.
speak about us,
Our
and they're going to
descendants.
say, "Oh, you know, the world created a people, and they called them Palestinian, in order to try to raise Israel again in the thousand time. And at the end, I don't know what happened, but this belongs to the history, and Israel is going to survive again and again. We have the experience in this kind of stuff."
Yeah, the only question is at what cost? I mean, we survived the
Exactly.
Nazis at a massive cost. We survived the Romans at a massive cost. We survived the Christians. We survived the Muslims at huge cost.
And now we're
So the-
surviving the United
Well,
Nations.
so the question is, at what point will the rest of the world wake up soon enough so that it doesn't have to be a massive catastrophe that we nonetheless survive? It is in the interest of everybody in the West, every infidel on the planet, to pressure the Palestinians and the triumphalist Muslims who can't bear the thought of an autonomous infidel state in what should be Dar al-Islam, and for the caliphators, that means the whole world. It is in the interest of every infidel on the planet that the Muslims should learn to get along with Jews rather than destroy them. And if the world encourages the people who want to destroy the Jewish people, even though it won't destroy them, but it will damage them terribly, if the world thinks that by doing that, they're going to make the world a better place rather than a much worse place, then, well, let's hope. Let's hope.
Okay, let's go back to the hope. Hatikva, what does Am Yisrael Chai mean to you?
I think I just explained it. It
Okay,
means that we
that
will
was the
live, but
inverse, yeah.
But can the world get to the point where instead of cursing us, they can look at us and say, wow, you guys, we might actually be able to learn something from you rather than learning how to hate you.
Ken, agree. Thank you both so much for joining us today. And I hope that those who have watched this will learn not just how to look at the media that is presented to you on these sites, but also to question everything. Unfortunately, we live in an age of AI, fake news, and alternate realities, and never accept anything at face value. And with that, I leave you with Am Yisrael Chai.